Hello, everybody. Professor Barth is here, Associate Professor of History at Arizona State University. Well, the time has come. The penny is no more, or at least the minting of pennies is no more. And we knew this was coming. I've talked about it for a long time. It's only a matter of time before they stop minting the penny. And here we are. Back in February of this year, President Trump instructed the U.S. Treasury to discontinue the penny. And in May, about 6 months ago, the Treasury Department announced their plan. This week, last Wednesday, November 12th, the final penny was minted. And the reason is obvious. It's not worth it anymore. The penny it's not worth it. Cost of production is almost 4 cents a penny. And it's not even because of the intrinsic value of the metal contained in it. Actually, if you just look at the metallic value, which is mostly zinc, it still falls a little under 1 cent. But when you add to that production cost, distribution, it comes out to almost 4 cents a penny. At 3 to 4 billion pennies minted every year, give or take, and it differed, from year to year, but that was the average. The projected savings are about $56 million a year. Now, this is a bit bittersweet because the penny is America's oldest coin. It dates all the way back to 1793. Initially, it was actually a fairly large copper coin, pure copper coin. Lady Liberty was featured on the front. In 1857, it was made a little smaller. A small amount of nickel was added to the composition, but it was still predominantly copper. An Indian head was on the front. And then in 1909, Abraham Lincoln was placed on the penny, and Lincoln's been on the penny ever since. In 1982, the copper was removed, or most of the copper was removed. There's still a tiny amount in there. It's just basically a veneer or copper-plated zinc now. But the copper was removed in 1982 because the old copper penny was worth more than 1 cent in intrinsic value. Actually, if you still have and you'll find them every now and then, you can tell it's a pre-1982 copper penny without even looking at the date because it just feels like copper. A pre-1982 copper penny has intrinsic metallic value of about 3 to 4 cents each. By 1982, they removed the copper. It became a primarily zinc coin. In 2010, the Union Shield was added instead of the Lincoln Memorial. And so there you have it. And so no more minting of pennies. Now, there's still an estimated 300 billion pennies in circulation. So you're still going to see them for a while, but there will be no new pennies. 2025 will be the last year. Now, that caused me to look a little more into the other coins. For example, the nickel. And you'll hear it here, maybe from me first, but I think the nickel is next on the chopping block. Not that they're going to get rid of the 5-cent piece, but I expect that there's going to be some changes to the nickel because the nickel is actually an expensive coin to make. About 1 billion of them are minted every year, but the cost of production is almost 14 cents per nickel. It's almost triple the face value. And the reason for that, the composition of the nickel is 3/4 copper. The nickel is a relatively larger coin than the penny or the dime. And if you look at the intrinsic value, the metal value of the nickel based on market rates today, it's at about a little more than 6 cents a nickel. So technically, you could say Gresham's Law will come into effect if people started hoarding it, although it is illegal to melt coins. But that's an expensive coin. So look for some changes there. There will remain a 5-cent coin, probably, but this is becoming more and more expensive by the year. The dime is cheaper to produce. It's a smaller coin. The dime, too, is predominantly copper, even more so than the nickel. But because it's such a small coin, it costs less than or fewer than 6 cents a dime to produce, and the intrinsic value is under 3 cents. The quarter, about 1.5 billion quarters on average minted every year. The cost of production of the quarter is just shy of 15 cents. It's a predominantly copper coin. The intrinsic value is between 6 and 7 cents a quarter. So the dimes and quarters are safe. Probably the nickel's going to need some reform. And there's a breakdown. This is from Forbes about the cost of each of the coins, and you can see there that's an expensive coin, that nickel. But so I've actually been asked by quite a few people, what do you make of this? And I'll be the first to admit, pennies are a nuisance. I'm a cash guy. I love cash. I like paying in cash. I prefer it when possible. And I've been saying for years that the penny, why do we have pennies? So I mean, very few people have a strong attachment to pennies. That being said, I felt myself getting a little, maybe not emotional, that's too strong. It's sentimental over the last week as this news came in. I mean, we've always had pennies. I got a penny sitting around here somewhere. Just kind of hard. I can't find it at the moment. It's just hard to imagine. They've always been around. It's like, something you can depend on when you have a big chunk of change. There's that copper mixed in there. It kind of gives some variety and color to it. I'm going to miss that. I'm not going to lie. Even though I was going to say it makes sense to get rid of the penny. Get it? But I know. But, I'll tell you, it's regrettable. It's regrettable that this had to happen, and it did have to happen. Let's be honest, but it is regrettable because what it represents, the elimination of the penny, it represents just the total erosion of the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. That a penny, that 1 cent is so worthless now that even some tiny coin made of fairly worthless metal is it's still too expensive to make at 1 cent face value. That's a real gut punch to a dollar, in my opinion. You have the Federal Reserve and that combined with a reckless Congress to thank for that one. But they will be around for a while. Like I said, the estimate is that there's about 300 billion pennies in circulation, and if you do the math, that's about $3 billion worth of pennies. Take all the pennies in a country, put them together, you got $3 billion. So they're going to be around for a while. But I'm already starting to see at grocery stores signs that say, please pay in exact change. And so another concern for me in the discontinuation of the penny is this continued trend away from cash, this discouraging people from using cash. Have exact change. Well, people don't like to pay with exact change. And so there will have to be some sort of solution to this. The obvious solution is rounding. And vendors are going to have to, ultimately we'll have to round up or round down to the nearest 5 cents. Now, until vendors begin doing this, the customer can offer to do this voluntarily. So if you go to a store and the vendor owes you $1.54 in change, you just say, keep the 4 pennies. I don't need the 4 pennies. Just give me $1.50. But ultimately, the way it should work is that the vendor will either automatically round up or round down. So, like if it's $1.54. The vendor will return $1.55 to the customer in change. Or if the change owed is $1.53, the vendor will return only $1.50 to the customer. This is what happened in Canada. Canada discontinued the Canadian penny in 2012, and vendors since then have rounded up or rounded down, and studies show that it actually evens out. It evens out for everybody, for the customer and for the vendor. So that seems to be the way. In Canada, there's no law mandating that vendors do this. They do it voluntarily, but if a law is necessary, then a law should be passed. And there are complications here with sales tax, and there might even be some litigation involved. There's no telling. But so anyway, those are my brief thoughts. And why don't you comment below and tell me what you think? Should the penny have been discontinued? Was this the right move? And I'll see you next time. Bye.